Well, hello everyone. It sure seems like we're hearing a lot in the news lately that foreclosures are up in a big way. Market Watch reports that according to Adam Data Solutions, foreclosures are up 219% since the start of the year, and foreclosure filings are up 153% from the same time period last year. In fact, they said 96% of major metro areas saw an increase in foreclosure filings, with foreclosure rates highest in Illinois, New Jersey, and Ohio. Okay, so what's going on, all right? Many say we are in a crash that will be worse than 2008. And I must say those foreclosure numbers are pretty compelling. So are we looking at a copy and paste event, okay? Is this history repeating itself? Well, today I want to give you 5 specific metrics where we're going to put 2008 and 2021 side by side and see if we get an idea of where our housing market's headed. So let's jump in with point number 1. Let's talk about cheap money, okay? Now, if you check out the 30-year fixed rate mortgage average, you'll see that in the early 2000s, interest rates actually weren't all that low, okay? In the year 2000, they went well over 8%, and between 2005 and 2007, they ranged between 5.5% and 6.5%. Okay, so if the rates weren't that low, why am I saying cheap money? Okay, it's because loan programs existed that allowed buyers to get an artificially low interest rate. Okay, like here's an example. You might be given like a 6.5% interest rate, like you buy a house 6.5%, right? But your monthly payment would be based on a 2% interest rate. Okay, the interest you didn't pay each month simply got added to your loan, okay? But you weren't particularly worried about that because you weren't noticing it every month. So this really was essentially a time of having cheap money because your monthly payment was based on a 2% interest rate. All right, well, fast forward to 2020 and 2021, and interest rates actually really were as low as like 2.7%. Not 8.6% or 5.5%. They were actually coming straight from the Fed, 2.7%. So when we put 2008 and 2021 side by side in this first comparison, we see that they come out almost exactly the same, but how they get there is different, okay? Because in the end, they both have cheap money, and what does cheap money do? Well, that takes me to my second point. Cheap money drives up home prices. So second point, home prices go up. In both of these time periods, you begin to see home prices spiral very, very quickly. You can see this on the Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index. Now, one thing you'll notice right off is the increase in the early 2000s is significant, but when you place it side by side to the 2021 increase, you can see it isn't nearly as pronounced, okay? So, okay, why is that? Well, there are a few key differences there, okay? In the early 2000s, there wasn't a housing shortage, all right? Supply was matching demand, okay? So, even though you could get the artificially low interest rate, also keep in mind that you didn't have to, okay? Plenty of buyers went with a traditional fixed rate payment, all right? Now, compare that to 2021. Everyone gets that lower rate, and it's not risky. It's a fixed rate. Also in 2021, and thanks to the 2008 crash, now we have a housing shortage to add to cheap money, okay? So here you have all these buyers with cheap money and not enough supply of houses to go around. Guys, it's like the perfect storm, okay? So when you take 2008 and 2021 and you put them side by side in this second comparison, both years saw home prices go up, but we saw it even more in 2021. All right, let's touch on the supply issue just for a bit. Federal Reserve Bank President Patrick Harker had this to say: since the Great Recession, the United States has not built enough housing to keep price growth relatively modest. This shortage is a major driver of the far too high inflation plaguing our country. Okay, I think many have commented with more than just a little frustration on why the Fed did not begin raising interest rates earlier. All right, clearly they were grappling with this issue of housing supply shortages. And it may have been that the hope of getting enough new houses out there, increasing supply, they may have thought that that would drive inflation down on its own. But nonetheless, it didn't. And so we arrive at our third comparison, okay? Third comparison, the Fed acknowledges Houston, we have a problem, okay? In 2005, Federal Chairman Alan Greenspan told New York Times that at a minimum, there's a little froth in the housing market. He went on to say it's hard not to see that there are a lot of local bubbles, okay? Now, fast forward to 2021, and we have Jerome Powell saying, so housing prices are moving up across the country at a high rate. Okay, so once again, in our side-by-side comparison, 2008, 2021, we see the Fed acknowledging, yeah, we do have a problem. And you know another similarity in this? In both events, the Fed took a really long time to respond, right? But respond they did eventually. That takes me to comparison number 4. Fed takes action, and the housing market responds. Now, if we look back at our 30-year fixed rate mortgage average, you can see the Fed, they really couldn't do much with interest rates in 2008 to control the frothiness, okay? Because the rates, they weren't even really all that low to begin with, okay? And this is where we really begin to kind of see a difference in our side-by-side comparisons, right? Because I am sure the Fed would have loved to intervene in 2008, but the housing crash didn't come as a result of low interest rates, okay? Instead, it came as a result of bad loan programs, all right? The slew of foreclosures that came in with the crash were from mortgage payments that were adjusting, okay? These were adjustable rate mortgages, adjusting to what borrowers couldn't afford in the first place, okay? So really, the Fed's hands are kind of tied in 2008, okay? Now, take a look today, and the Fed is intervening by raising interest rates. And guess what? This time, it's actually working, okay? You can see the market has definitely slowed as the Fed has raised rates, right? The way the housing market has responded very quickly, it shows that buyers don't have those unhealthy lending programs to fall back on. In 2008, if the Fed had raised rates so quickly, nothing would have changed, okay? There were loan programs that made you not care about the interest rates, all right? You could just work around them. In 2008, honestly, the crash was inevitable. It really was. The housing market was based on bad loans given to borrowers who couldn't afford them. You know, all a borrower had to do was just state that they made a certain amount of money and they could get a loan, right? And the next thing you know, the payment they could never afford in the first place, right? Because they really didn't have that high of income. Now that payment starts to go up. You know, you don't see the Fed triggering a crash by rapidly raising interest rates. It was really honestly more about like bad loan programs self-destructing, okay? So side-by-side comparison number 4, the housing market corrects both in 2008 and 2022. But in 2008, the Fed's actions didn't particularly nudge it along. Now in 2022, it's pretty much entirely the Fed's actions, okay, that have us to where we are today. All right, moving on to comparison number 5, let's talk about foreclosures then and now, because we're seeing a lot about them in the news right now. Now, in their 2009 article, CNN reported that U.S. foreclosure filings spiked by more than 81% in 2008. And they're up 225% compared with 2006. They went on to say a total of 861,000 families lost their homes to foreclosure last year. There were more than 3.1 million foreclosure filings issued during 2008, which means that 1 of every 54 households received a notice last year. Now, if you take a look at this graph by Adam Data, you can see just how high those foreclosures were, all during the early 2000s, ending in 2010 with well over 1.6 million foreclosures in a single year. Now, take a look in the chart at the years 2020 through 2021, and you'll be able to see what the many articles are talking about, okay? Because there's definitely been a marked increase in foreclosures since 2021. So in comparison number 5, when we once again put the 2 years side by side, you see 2021 is nowhere near the massive number that we saw in 2008. So I wanted to dig into this a little bit deeper. So what I did is I hopped over to CoreLogic, okay? In their September 13th article entitled Loan Performance Insights, they wanted to measure loan delinquency rates because they said measuring early stage delinquency rates is important for analyzing the health of the mortgage market. And honestly, I mean, if you think about that, that makes sense, right? Because after all, what leads to foreclosure, right? Well, you start with early stage delinquency, right? And then you move to transition. Okay, so you got your delinquency. Oh, I'm late on my payments. Then you move to transition, and then finally you move to foreclosure. So especially with foreclosure rates increasing so rapidly right now, it's important that we know what delinquency rates are doing, because that's going to tell us a really good story there. So if foreclosures are up, you would think delinquency rates would be up too. So let's dig into this and find out. According to CoreLogic, the delinquency rate in June of 2021 was 4.4%. In June of 2022, that rate had actually decreased to 2.9%. Not what you might have expected, not what I expected. According to CoreLogic's principal economist, Molly Boesel, while early stage delinquencies edged up in June, they remained near historic lows through the first half of 2022. The article goes on to read, in June 2022, 2.9% of mortgages were delinquent by at least 30 days or more, including those in foreclosure. This represents a 1.5 percentage point decrease in the overall delinquency rate compared with June 2021. Now, the chart shows that all stages of delinquency are down while the actual number of foreclosures is up. Okay, so totally scratching my head over this one. What gives, all right? Why? What's going on here? Well, the moratorium on foreclosures is what gives, okay? HUD.gov notes that the expiration of the foreclosure moratorium was on July 31st, 2021. So we all know the CARES Act provided homeowners up to 18 months of forbearance on their mortgage payments, and depending when it was first requested, that forbearance period has all but ended, okay? Homeowners have had to make some financial decisions. Either they resume their monthly payments or they sell their home. A lot of sellers have equity in their homes, meaning they can sell and potentially even make a profit, okay? So from that standpoint, it really does make sense that delinquency rates are down even though foreclosures are up. Now, according to Property Onion, foreclosures in the first half of 2022 are up 219% across the United States annually. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is definitely contributing to this, guys. According to the Star Telegram, foreclosures are up from 177 postings in July to 246 postings in August in Tarrant County. That's a 39% month-over-month increase. In Dallas County, foreclosures increased by 41% between July and August. So foreclosures way up, but delinquency rates are down. So what's driving these foreclosures? Okay, well, most of these homeowners in trouble were already delinquent on their payments during the pandemic, okay? That makes sense with the delinquency rates being so much higher, 2021, than they are in 2022. So then with the moratorium lifted, they're now facing foreclosure. But wait, I thought they had a lot of equity and they could just sell. Well, interest rates have nearly doubled since 2021, and this has slowed the market down. So, you know, if a homeowner knows they're in trouble, but they wait until the last minute thinking they can just sell, homes just aren't selling that quickly anymore, okay? Now, here's another nugget to consider as well. A person can be completely current on their monthly payments and still lose their home if they don't pay their property taxes. And you gotta remember, property taxes go up when values go up, so they've gone up in a massive way year over year. And honestly, I'm sure that's hurting a lot of people. So in the end, honestly, foreclosures definitely up, delinquency rates down, and that tells us most of these foreclosures are coming from 2020 and 2021. Okay, looking back on that graph by Adam Data tells us a few things. Foreclosures are definitely up, but they're still at record lows. Okay, so are we seeing home prices correcting right now? Dallas market, we absolutely are, okay? Especially in the higher price ranges. Is that a result of foreclosures like it was in 2008? Not so much. It's being driven by increased interest rates instead. The fact the market is adjusting so rapidly, okay, to those rising interest rates communicates how healthy lending practices are, okay? In 2008, remember, the Fed's ability to influence the market was limited because of all those crazy loan programs out there. And now there aren't as many alternative loan programs. You know, the Fed holds all the reins and it's pulling the market in. Hope that made sense. Well, listen, tell me, Was this information helpful? If it was, the best thing you can do is head back to my channel, check out another video, okay? But before you do, please hit that subscribe button and click on that little bell. We'd sure appreciate it. Oh, and don't forget to check us out online, okay? Lots of info there. You can find us, you ready for it? www.homeindallastexas.com. If you'd like to connect with other buyers and sellers just like you want to join us in our Facebook group, okay? We're over 1,000 members strong now. Lots of movers connecting and sharing experiences. Listen, in the meantime, thank you so very much for joining me today, and hey, have a great day.